If you've watched my last video, you'll know how to stroke simple one-syllable words that have short vowels. In this video, I will discuss the remaining vowel sounds and some other concepts. Before watching this video, you should have the layout memorized by now. I should also note that if you're not from North America, our definitions of diphthongs and long vowels may be different to yours. I wasn't even taught what a diphthong is in school, and so I would just be going with what Plover calls these. And if you know IPA, you may find some of these vowels confusing since they're not all that consistent. I can't really help you with this, and all I can really say is just try and ignore the inconsistencies. I've linked a Reddit post below explaining Plover vowels much more rigorously with IPA, which may be helpful to some of you. So with the disclaimers out of the way, let's talk about long vowels. First is the long A sound, as in the words say and paid. This is given the AEU chord. When it is combined with the ending R key, we can make words like pair and care. Next is the E sound, or the long E vowel. This is given the chord AOE and can be found in words like seen and keen. When combined with the ending R key, we can make words like tear and sear. Next is the long I sound. It is chorded with AOEU. When it is combined with the ending R key, we can make words like tire and higher. The long O vowel, as in the word O, is given the chord OE. This can be found in words like toe and crow, and words like lower can be written with this OE chord when combined with the ending R key. Finally, there is a long U vowel, as in the words few and Q. On the Seno keyboard, this is chorded with AOU. In addition to these words that have an U sound, it is also used in words that have an U sound but not spelled with a double O. So for example, words like glue would use AOU as well, but words like pool would use a different chord. More on that later. Next we have the diphthongs. Firstly is the aw sound, as in bought and pawn. It is chorded with a U. Note that this is very similar to the short O vowel sound, but it is usually used in words that aren't spelled with a double O, so there's no ambiguity. For example, bot, B-O-T, would be stroked with just the O vowel, while bought, B-O-U-G-H-T, would be stroked with a U. Then we have the ow sound, as in prowl and out. It is given the OU chord. When it is combined with the ending R key, we can make a vowel that's slightly different, but we treat it as the same. So words like power and tower would be written with O-U-R. Finally, the last diphthong is OEU, which is for oi. This is in words like toy and coil. Because this sound is relatively uncommon in English, it can also be found in a lot of Plover briefs, particularly words that have a short vowel sound followed by a consonant and a long E sound. For example, heavy can be briefed as hoif, lucky can be loik, study can be stoy, and so on and so forth. You won't have to worry about this too much for now, but it's good to keep this in mind when you start to brief more later on. Finally, the last section in vowels are disambiguator chords. These are used to distinguish homonyms. The first one to mention is the AE chord. This is used in words that have an EA in their spelling, but also have a homonym that may be spelled differently. For example, to stroke the word bear, as in the adjective, we would just use the regular AEU chord I had mentioned before. But to stroke the word bear, as in the animal, we would use the AE chord to distinguish between these two words. Same with the words pear and pear. Pear, the fruit, would be given the AE chord, while the word pair, as in two things, would be stroked regularly with the AAU chord. For words like gate and gate, which both don't have EA in their spellings, the AI variant would be given the regular long A chord. So gate, as in a horse's gait, would be given AEU, while golden gate would be stroked with AE. Words with a long E vowel can also use this disambiguator chord. For example, we see this in the words beet and beet. The vegetable beet is stroked with the AOE chord since it just contains a double E, while the verb beet is given the AE chord because it contains EA in its spelling. The other disambiguator chord is AO. This is used in two categories. The first is in words that have a double O but are not pronounced in any particular way. For example, floor, school, and book are all pronounced very differently, but they will use the AO chord because they contain a double O in their spelling. So to stroke the word pool would be like this, and the word soot would be like this. The other category in which this AO chord is used is in homonyms that have a long O sound but are spelled with OA. For example, road and road are homonyms, with the OA variant being stroked with AO. Remember that these disambiguator chords are really only for homonyms. For example, the word boat is only stroked using the OE chord since it does not have any other homonyms. And that's it for vowels. It's a lot of content, and vowels aren't always so clear-cut all the time. They are one of the trickiest parts when learning stenography, so don't feel bad if you don't have a grasp on them just yet. I still get them wrong from time to time. The rest of lesson 3 is pretty much self-studyable, and I'm only going to go through fingerspelling as it's a bit more than just memorizing chord. Compound clusters, the missing consonants, and other letters are pretty straightforward and just involve referring back to the diagrams for which ones you're unsure about. It's a lot of memorization, but do let me know if you have any questions about them. You should definitely check out lessons 3B and 3C before continuing on, as they are prerequisites to what I will mention next. Sometimes we may not have a word in a dictionary and we have to spell these out letter by letter. These can be proper nouns, technical jargon, or maybe internet slang. If we use the asterisk key in addition to the keys and chords on the left, we can spell stuff out letter by letter. So I could write the following using fingerspelling rather easily. If I add the right hand P, I can make this capitalized. As for the missing letters, we use the left-hand chords we learned in previous lessons, though there are still a few other letters that are missing. These are C, Q, X, and Z. Here is how I would fingerspell the entire alphabet capitalized. Fingerspelling is useful if you have a dedicated steno machine, but if you are able to switch back and forth between regular typing and steno mode on your machine easily, like on the Georgie or the splittography, fast fingerspelling may not be necessary, though it is very useful for adding dictionary entries like so. The last subject I will talk about are briefs. As I mentioned in previous videos, these are short and abbreviated non-phonetic entries that are used to increase speed and comfort. For example, the is used once every 14 words and thus is given the very easy to stroke key of the right-hand T. This frees up the chord THE, which happens to be they. This, in turn, makes disambiguating there, and there rather simple. Plover has an abundance of briefs, but you don't have to memorize every single one. In fact, it's better to come up with your own strokes that are natural to you, which you will remember easily. Though, try not to come up with your own entries for the top 100 most common briefs, as you may run into conflicts. Plover usually has a briefed and a phonetic way to stroke a word. However, some words only exist in a briefed form. These are usually very common English words. Learn Plover has a list of the top 100 most common briefs, and these account for most of the cases of brief solitude. You should try and memorize all of these, but it doesn't have to be all at once. I think one column every week is a reasonable goal. You may not like memorizing, and I certainly don't, but you will find that briefs are just so useful that you will end up embracing them. For example, look at the briefs for somebody and something. They're just so simple and easy to remember. This would be the fully written out way to stroke the word somebody. It's just so much longer than just SB. Don't be afraid to add your own entries and briefs, especially if you're familiar with previous lessons by now. You may want to think of briefs for your name, proper nouns, or other words you would often type. You can always delete these entries if you find that they just do not work out. Just make sure to use the user dictionary to separate these from the main one. And that's it for this video. I hope it's not too much to digest, and of course this is just an aid to learn Plover. It's completely normal to keep checking back on the site for concepts you're unsure about, so don't worry about yourself if you think you're not taking in concepts fast enough. Steno is hard and takes patience to learn. Next video, I'll try and cover the rest of the lessons in Learn Plover. At this point, you should be able to stroke pretty much every one-syllable word. In fact, you actually have the tools to stroke multi-syllable words, you just may not know it. Try experimenting with stroking these various multi-syllable words and see if you can do it. Don't worry if you cannot, as I will mention how in the next video.